So it turns out I've been chatting to myself here for 20 minutes because I had my sound on mute. Thank you, Galerion, for pointing that out. So I'm going to start again, and we're going to do it correctly this time. So I'll cut this video at the end. So, but I'm going to run through it a little bit faster. So I'll be pointing out that there's this great infographic where you can see the all the basic income experiments that have been happening in the past decades all over the world. I think it's super interesting. The Millennium Program is 75 million people. I've been talking about this in the past. It's not maybe not like a basic income like we imagine it because it pays so little, but it's something that I think is worth paying attention to because it's it is a basic income that's was kind of really thought of as a cash transfer program to help people in need. And the way they paid for it is they got rid of they had billions of dollars in subsidies for oil, for fuel. And some economists looked at this and realized that it was all going to rich people, this fuel subsidy, because they were using the most fuel. So they said, wait, how can we make it so it goes to more to poor people? Let's just pay everybody a fixed amount and then they can spend it on fuel or whatever they need. Has been very, very powerful. So I think this is a great infographic that just shares the overview of what a basic income is about. So I think this, really cool infographic. Very happy that these guys here made it. So then I wanted to talk about what's happening in Germany, which is that we have a pilot project on basic income, which is by an organization that's been giving out money to people on a lottery basis, like a monthly basic income for the year. And they've given it to hundreds of people already. And they wrote a book about this where they interview people. But now they're doing an academic kind of pilot project where they're working with universities to do the research, and they pick 120 people and they give them each 1,200 euros a month for 3 years, and they see how it changes people's lives. And it's really interesting to have this kind of thing. And what I think is really interesting about this is that unlike the Finnish study, which was run by the government, this is run by a basic income advocacy organization. And so they're looking at those things that we don't know. They have a lot of insight into the research that's already been done on basic income. They are looking at a broad range of benefits that will accrue from basic income. The Finnish study was really focused on its impact on work, which I think is very limited and a little bit disappointing, actually. So I think this is going to be a much more interesting study. It's going to have a much more interesting finding. It's like the Economic Security Project's studies like in Stockton in the US or Give Directly's research in Africa. These are really well designed studies and well funded. So this is really, really cool to see. And staying on Germany, I was talking about this article where the Populist Nationalist Party supports a basic income, but only for German citizens. So this is interesting. I think that they will not be able to find common ground with the progressives who are in favor of a basic income, because this is a deal breaker for progressives. If it's only for nationals, then it creates this two-class society, especially because Germany has a lot of immigrants. So that means that it will be even more unfair that immigrants have to do the job that Germans don't want to do anymore and can afford not to do. And this is not a good idea, I think. So, but it's interesting that the nationalist populist party has felt like the need to jump on this train. So, in Switzerland, we have this proposal for it's an initiative, which means it's a new law that's written by people and then gets voted on. They need to gather a lot of signatures, and then Switzerland is a direct democracy, so anyone can write a law. If they get enough signatures, it will go into a referendum where everybody will vote on it. And this ex-banker, retired banker, has decided to create this, initiative to rewrite the constitution, the Swiss constitutions, and the first article will be that a basic income will be a right of every citizen, and the government shall pay it out. It also includes a micro tax for transactions, which is a good way to generate money and reduce also reduce speculation on the stock market. So it's really cool, and they will get rid of a lot of other taxes and so on, and have a sovereign money where they will no longer issue debt, and only the national bank is allowed to create money. Commercial banks will no longer be allowed to do that. This was voted on in 2018, this particular section, and had a no of like 75%. Of course, the basic income was also voted no in 2016 with some 75%. Anyway, this revision of the Swiss constitution would do all of those things, and the national bank would be turned over to the people. So it turns out that the Swiss National Bank is actually publicly traded. You can buy shares in it, which is kind of bizarre, but a lot of national banks are actually like that around the world. But in the future, the idea would be that this will be owned by the Swiss citizens as a kind of like a cooperative. So, and it will have a constitutional court where people are selected by lottery. So kind of the Greek system, which I think is cool. So he's been, branded as this kind of outcast, and somebody wrote that he's a conspiracy theorist. I think these are, as character assassinations, because these things would dramatically change the way business and society works in Switzerland, and it's interesting. It's interesting. Will be very interesting to watch how this whether this gets enough signatures to be voted on, and what the campaign is once it gets voted on, once it's up for a vote. Yeah, I think super interesting thing to watch. The next part is we're jumping geographically to to New Zealand. And in New Zealand, they're going to have an election in a few days, in October. And this new party, the Opportunities Party, will be running on this basic income premise. That's like their policy number one. You can see it here on the left. On the right, sorry, all of their policies. And policy number one is a universal basic income. So this is very inspirational. They're not likely to win, of course, but they're pushing the conversation forward. The question will be whether the Labour Party will be interested in, or will take a discussion on a basic income. We don't know, but things happen fast in New Zealand. New Zealand politics moves quickly. The elections are not, announced more than like 2 months in advance. And if the government decides that they want to do a policy, maybe if the Opportunities Party wins, a lot of votes, if they win 5% of the votes, the government might say, wow, a lot of people want this. They're willing to go vote for this like party nobody's heard of because they have this as their top policy. Maybe they'll go for it. And I don't know if there's been opinion polling done in New Zealand about whether people want something like a basic income, but I can imagine that it will be quite high, which actually leads us to this article, this publication, this report from a cross-parliamentary group on a Green New Deal in the UK. And they did opinion polling and found that 57% of Brits are in favor of a universal basic income. So I think here it is. I think that's powerful. I think there's been studies, polls done like this before, and in many countries there's a majority in favor. So I think this, kind of really shows the government that there's support for these kind of policies. A lot of politicians don't think it's feasible, sort of economically and financially, but I think this will change as more proposals get discussed and come up. Actually, before we go to that, I want to talk about something else in the UK. So we're going to doing this geographically, and that is the Leeds, which is a city in the UK, has approved a universal basic income pilot project. You can see Liberal Democrats, Labour, and Green councillors back the plan. So this is cross-party support here. Liberal Democrats are sort of a centre party. Labour, of course, the Socialist Party, Social Democrat Party, and the Greens. And Leeds, I believe, is the largest British city so far to propose something like this. And Sheffield and Hull were the other ones, as it's written here. And there was, as I said, support growing for this in the UK. So could happen, especially if somebody, the Liberal Democrats or the Labour Party, put this on their flag and decide to contest the next election with that. They might win a lot of votes. Boris Johnson's conservative government is slipping because of all the Brexit kind of misfirings. So could happen. So now let's move over to the US. It says Hudson, New York, a city in New York, launched its basic income pilot program in September. It's the smallest US city to embrace a policy like this. So, yeah, that's interesting. More and more, there's the thing about the US, of course, is that Andrew Yang ran for president on this policy. He went a lot further than people expected. He went to the final 6, I believe, out of like 20 plus candidates, and it's the idea has gained a lot of traction in American media and in the American public, among the American public. So it's no surprise that cities are now starting pilot projects. There's of course already a big pilot project in Stockton in California. There's other places. There's a coalition of mayors for guaranteed income that's kind of cropped up and who are trying to work on this. So yes, in America, a lot of people are pushing for this. A lot of the progressive congressional members have put forward proposals, and with the elections coming up, it could be a referendum on this idea. There's a lot of progressive candidates for Senate and Congress who have this in their policies, and if a lot of those candidates win, it would create a strong mandate to create a basic income. So very interesting to read that as well. Let's see. So before we jump to some global stuff, let's talk about cancel rent. So this is not directly to do with basic income, but because of the pandemic, a lot of people have been calling to cancel rent in the US, and the mayor of Ithaca, New York, has tried to get this passed as a law in the state, in the city. Unfortunately, he was blocked by state law. He's not allowed to do this thing because of an emergency thing that was put in New York State to prevent mayors to unilaterally make policies against the pandemic. And so it hasn't. It passed the city council, but it hasn't gone into effect. And he says, I believe, that he would prefer something like a basic income because it would be, it would have longer lasting positive impacts than just canceling rent, which would also have a lot of potential negative impacts, like affecting all landlords who may also not be rich and who may have debts and so on that they have to pay off. So yes, this is an interesting article in Time magazine, of course, which is, if something is published in a publication like Time, I pay a little bit more attention. So before we go, a couple of global stories. Latin America, in Argentina, is a very interesting story developing here, which is that I don't know exactly what this is about, but there is a lot of work being done to work against the pandemic. They had a very long lockdown in Argentina, longer than other countries, and the president of Argentina entered into dialogue with other political people and opponents and so on, and has very high approval ratings, and managed to flatten its infection curve and began paying a sort of a basic income of 140 euros a month to everybody, or sorry, to not to everybody, just to low earners and casual workers who needed it, who would otherwise, fall into destitution, and so that's really interesting to see this kind of response. A lot of people called for it in a lot of countries. Not a lot of countries implemented like that. I think Spain did something similar, but Argentina is also really leading the pack here. So really, really interesting. So now, finally, some global stories. First of all, also not directly related to basic income, but the World Economic Forum publishes lots of interesting stories about the global economy, and um, yes, there's a need for a basic income. They don't mention it directly here, but they have these ideas of we need social protection policies, we need sustainable and decent jobs, and so on. And a basic income can help with a lot of these. Certainly, it's a way to protect the vulnerable, and it's also a way to get more decent jobs because people who have their basic needs taken care of, who don't need a job to survive, will pay more attention to the decency of the work and only accept work that actually is meaningful and brings with it some kind of some sense of worth and some sense of contribution to society. I think that's really important. We need that in our work. That's why a common criticism of the basic income is, well, when people stop working, and working is really important. It's not the point of basic income is not to replace work. It's a way to create more bargaining power for people so that when they take work, they can make sure that it's something that's fairly compensated, and that it's safe, and that it is a place where they can contribute to society, and not something that some company just wants them to sit in a call center and sell things to people that nobody actually wants or needs. And yeah, this is the world we want to create. And the World Economic Forum is surprisingly progressive. I always thought of it as a conservative, organization, but it's very progressive on a lot of things. They've talked about the Great Reset, how society should rethink how the social contract works because of the pandemic and so on. And this is really cool to see. So, final story. The UN leaders are, concerned that we will not achieve the Sustainable Development Goals because of the pandemic and so on. And people are talking about, what do we do about this? And one potential solution is a basic income. This could accelerate the achievement of the SDGs dramatically, because basic income will help everybody level up. And as they say here as well, phasing out expenses that don't serve some humanity. A lot of countries are still paying fossil fuel subsidies. Like I said, Iran used to do that and then got rid of it and introduced a basic income. This is something that a lot of countries can do because there's fuel subsidies in many, many countries. And if they would replace them with a basic income, everybody would be better off, including the environment and the poor. So, So I think I will leave it there. I was talking to myself without sound for 20 minutes, and now these last 20 minutes, I guess I was able to be heard. So thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day, great evening, or whatever time it is in your part of the world. Thanks for watching, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.